Hey guys, welcome back to the Drop Panda Podcast. My name's Adam. We're 4 to 5 guys, twice a month from Melbourne. We're from Melbourne. We talk about nerdy stuff. Next to me is...
I'm Julz. Today I'll be talking about how movies have taken some cues from video games in recent releases.
I'm Tim. I don't have a topic, so...
You're bystanding.
Yeah, I am bystanding today. So I'm just going to pass this on to the next person.
Nick, I'm going to be talking about dystopian films and kind of that genre.
Okay, I'm Dylan, and I'm bringing. What talk about? In the wake of the latest announcement that Rick and Morty is getting 70 new episodes, as in confirmed, I'm talking about the social media reactions that fans can have and how that impacts current television and just kind of media productions.
And similar to you, I'm talking about TV as well, but on how the new generation is using streaming services instead of traditional television.
Today we've got a special guest for us, for you guys here. We've got Konny on deck as well to provide his input.
Hello. Good introduction.
Just to chime in every now and then on stuff I can relate to.
I think we'll start with the TV stuff.
Alright.
My niece was over yesterday, and when you have kids, kids come in.
How old is this child?
She's 5.
Yep.
Super energetic child, and I'm old. I can't really take care of children anymore.
Old.
So I'm I'm just gonna throw something on TV for you to watch for the next 3 hours.
It works.
And she's like, "Oh, you should put on Netflix." How do you know what that is? And I'm on Netflix on my browser, and she's like, "You should go to the kids section." You shouldn't look at my stuff. I look at stuff on Netflix. You shouldn't be watching.
That's a good idea. When porn ends, just sit in there.
And you should go to the kids section and type in this. I'm like, how do you know this? What do you watch at home? Don't you watch TV?
No.
What? No. So my topic to everyone is, we've got guys who are obviously watching YouTube. That's the new norm now.
Yep.
But also Netflix is also the new norm as well.
Yeah.
And then we got Stan in Australia. We got some other services here
You've
and there.
got Hulu and Amazon as well. It's just a massive cultural phenomenon. It's just changed how we take consume media.
The same way how video stores have now died off.
Blockbuster.
Yeah, that's gone.
Are people still watching Foxtel?
Hardly.
People
do. They definitely.
It'd be interesting to look at the subscription rate of Foxtel.
Fox,
They've also got a Foxtel streaming service as well, so you don't need to have a cable connection to your home anymore if you want to look at the content that they provide exclusively. Yeah.
It's still big. I know people still have Foxtel in their houses and still watch it. My dad's got a limited range on his, but I think
You just watch it online anyway.
Yeah, you can. Netflix kind of came out and changed the game, and now it's a global phenomenon, and they're even going up to Cannes and everything and trying to be taken seriously as a film distributor.
Yeah.
To rival actual film studios, and that's why everyone's terrified that it's going to be the next. It's going to be
Netflix got originals as well.
Yeah, it's going to be the early 50s where TV came in and everyone in film freaked the fuck out because they're like, what are we going to do? They're taking away our business. I know, let's make 3D. And that worked out really well.
There's also there's an element of that, and I don't know the full details of this, but certain awards providers or organizations that don't want to give Netflix nominations and stuff because of their unusual distribution model. So Netflix obviously does produce prestige content that should be getting awards or should be up for them, and they're out of the race just because they're not in theaters and stuff. So
they're not classified as TV.
Yeah,
they're classified. They're trying to break in, but there's a lot of resistance. Cannes, they were trying to get into Cannes, this big film festival, because it would give them some legitimacy. But I think that Cannes have come out and said, we're not doing this. We're not accepting Netflix films as our distributors. And they're basically just trying to go for the Oscars. They're just trying to be taken seriously. But on the same platform, they give certain films... They do what Cannes does and give certain films the opportunity to be able to be distributed where otherwise they wouldn't be able to. Scorsese's new film that's coming out, The Irishman. Nobody wanted to touch that, and Netflix stepped forward and said, well, get the funding. Or Orson Welles' last film. That was that went into massive contract issues and was gestating for 3 decades, and Netflix came out and said, "We'll produce it."
We can release it. Yeah.
So there's both good and bad things that are going on.
Yeah.
I've actually heard Netflix and all the streaming sites being compared to the like contemporary version of direct to DVD or direct to video, that kind of thing.
But
in terms of the movies, like,
Not quite.
honestly, it's. I can see where that comes from, but at the same time, I think the quality level of the releases are generally a bit better than direct to TV. Some of them aren't as good. Like, you wouldn't want to see them in cinemas.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think, like Bright, which had Will Smith, I wouldn't think that would do very well in cinemas because it just wasn't super great.
Another example,
Wasn't that a TV show?
No, it was a movie.
No, it wasn't.
it
wasn't a series.
Probably would have done
It was a
well.
Will Smith movie that came out, but on the other end of that, you have like Annihilation that came out.
Yeah.
That movie was fucking phenomenal.
Which should have been in cinemas.
Yeah, that movie should have been in film.
It's the interesting element. Like, again, I have nieces and nephews, and they're really on top of all this technology. They're like 6 and 8 years old, and they really, like, from probably 3 to 4 years old, they knew how to navigate YouTube and Netflix. And it is going to be interesting to see how they grow up into this world where they have all the choice in the world of what media they are allowed to consume or whatever. So again, like, we've grown up into it, we've learned to deal with it, and we understand the differences between broadcast and the traditional distributions, as opposed to streaming stuff. But like, they're sort of swimming in it. They may never know what like a TV channel is. Do you know what I mean? So and they may never have their viewing interrupted by ads and things like that,
or at least 30-second ads.
Which
mean nothing.
Well, like a couple months back, I think my cousin, she's really young, and all of a sudden I get a text from my uncle. It says, "Hey Dill, how are you?" I was like, "Not bad, blah blah blah." And then I find out that it's my 6-year-old cousin that can now work a phone and text. And I was just blown away.
So it's actually not your uncle.
No, it was my uncle. It was my 6-year-old cousin that knows how to work. I didn't know how to text until I was 14.
Wait.
No, of course.
Does she not have her own phone?
No, now she does. And she has her Instagram, and she's got like live Instagram
What?
and everything. And she's like live videos all the time, sending invites to the girl.
Scary and also dangerous.
That's how.
I feel like that's bad.
Because there's a whole world out there that don't actually really understand mature adults.
They're also not being educated about this early on as well.
And they have no idea. They just jump right in. Because this is easy.
The thing with us was we grew up with it and everything.
Yeah, we grew up while it changed.
They're like being born into this world where like technology and like all these different like platforms have become so like inundated in our culture and society. That now it's like it's just the norm. So like you go to school, they're getting iPads for like kids and that. We're like losing these shitty fucking square box
notebook things.
I don't want to learn how to use paperclip.
So my niece who's 8 years old the other day asked me, "Would you like to be a YouTuber when you grow up?" And I was like, "How do you know I'm not already a YouTuber?" But it was this very strange cultural shift. Like, when I was that age, I might have asked someone, "Hey, do you want to be an actor? Do you want to be on TV or something like that?"
Yeah.
It's completely different now.
The occupation's changed from actor
Yeah,
to YouTuber.
And actually, she has recorded herself in a YouTube style format. Like, she hasn't posted it on YouTube or anything. But they're thinking in this way of like being media personalities and stuff on the internet, and it's a weird, different world that they're growing up in.
Changed the game completely.
I saw something hilarious the other day, and it was this dude goes into his sister's bedroom and goes, "Good night," and she says, "Oh, don't forget to subscribe." Because she thinks that's how you say good night. She's been like goodbye or something.
Okay, that's weird.
That is super weird.
YouTube.
What? I'll be so confused.
Oh man! Like and subscribe.
And that is a problem. Like, kids are just pounding out YouTube. Like it's just YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube. And like,
absolutely.
Oh, it's. I mean, it's the same as us when we watched kids shows as a kid, but we had like a time.
It's a bit different.
And, outside is such a like important thing.
Outside? What's outside?
Yeah, Still, like, I don't know. Maybe
you guys kick the footy around, right?
Like, I always did that, but like, maybe I think it's getting a little bit unhealthy. If anything.
Because like, not that anyone. Does anyone care about the royal wedding that happened last night?
No.
I thought that was today.
The what?
That was actually yesterday.
My family was watching it. Like, I was just over at my aunt's.
The royal wedding, yeah.
So it was on, but I was like distracted. I didn't really care. But yeah, it's like, what point did you?
Like, we had people coming over and they're like, "Hey, we should put on the royal wedding." Like, I don't have an antenna because it like came off a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So like, why did you get it fixed? we don't watch TV anymore.
Yeah.
So what's the point of putting the antenna back on?
That's
Yeah.
very interesting.
We stream everything now, and
Yeah, same here. Like
think
this
of it-
house here, right here, man. When we moved in, we had the TV, and at first we were like, nah, fuck it, we don't need one. Like we just like had the Xbox, and that was it. TV upstairs too. When I first moved in, we just didn't bother. Like you don't need a TV like channels anymore because nobody watches it. If you got
Yeah.
Netflix, we're all set.
No,
I
not
don't
at
know
all.
But
anyone who uses the actual
Yeah,
aerial
actual aerial.
connection
Yeah.
anymore.
sad.
It's weird. And like houses will be designed without aerials.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Like, like why put an antenna on a house that isn't going to be used?
You know what was really retarded? My parents just bought a house a few years ago, and only now we realized, because we rented it out, that the antenna doesn't work. We had a guy come in, and he just went to us, dude, it wasn't connected.
Connected to anything.
So it's just there for decoration.
Yeah.
It's like it's what
Yeah.
houses should look like.
Like, at some point they're gonna just turn into like house ornaments. So they'll be like little things you put on the front of your car,
Yeah.
where it's like it's just a
It's
decoration.
That's an old school. So, yeah, exactly.
That's a really cool antenna you got there, man. Thanks. Yeah.
It's still functional.
Still functional. What? Oh, no way.
No way.
This is like 2 years.
Yeah.
Antennas are the new like vinyls.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I watch my TV with an antenna. I don't stream.
That's great.
You hipster.
Black and white.
Man, he's cool.
Yeah, black and white
Retro
movies as well.
boxes.
I'll be like French cinema.
Got a cathode ray tube. Still works. It's great.
Oh, cool.
Alright.
Sweet.
Alright. I'm just gonna talk about dystopian future, like film and video games, and has the genre kind of like died off in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I definitely
Or
feel
not
like
years, but like months. Like when was the last dystopian future film?
Book of Eli was my last one.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't watch them.
Like I think the
2010.
Yeah.
yeah, like before that, like Ready Player One is kind of dystopian.
It is, yeah.
How about we start this with can you provide a definition of a dystopian?
Yeah, so I was
Fiction.
figuring, is it like inherently connected to sci-fi,
Mm-hmm.
or like does it have to have like kind of some scientific explanation? So like you said,
Book of
Dylan,
Eli.
yeah, Book of Eli, that's not really like science.
I'd say it's
Like
mostly like
Annihilation is kind of dystopian as well, kind of scientific, like sci-fi.
Yeah.
I'd say like an oppressed and broken form of society
Yeah.
is dystopian.
Like Hunger Games?
Hunger
Yeah.
Games is
Yeah.
definitely dystopian.
Definitely. But like, just like, I don't think that as a genre is ever going to die out. Like, it's quite a good theme or like concept to really set up an
Yeah.
easy form of conflict for like
It's
the
true.
protagonist to have to wade through. So
Yeah, it usually is sort of a far-flung future, or I guess it can be sort of one step into the future, but there's usually it's not because I think one of the great successes of the Marvel franchise, especially the early ones, Iron Man and stuff, was that it was close enough to our reality that you could almost say that this was happening, whereas you definitely, I get a feeling with dystopian films that it's a very different sort of world than what we live in.
Yeah.
It's got to be set a couple decades in the future. Like it can't just be Detroit.
Right.
It's done.
it's also, I find it's often just, basically it's just an allegory. It's just a way of talking about what's actually happening in the present.
Of course.
I read this thing that Alan Moore once said when he was talking about V for Vendetta, and he's like, "Oh, I said it in the far-flung future, but far-flung, all the surveillance that the British government was
Installing at the time,
basically. And then as a result of V for Vendetta, they apparently just boosted it. And like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We should keep implementing that.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
The 80s was a dark time.
Yeah.
But what kind of like utopian futures? Like
Is
film-
utopian a word?
Yeah.
Utopian
Utopia.
is the
Utopia's
opposite.
the perfect
in
society.
Sorry.
film, like what have you seen recently? That
Oh,
kind of,
utopia.
yes.
Utopian. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah.
future in a good light.
The garden, Adam and Eve.
That's a good question.
I can't
Actually,
think of
that's-
any.
But this is a thing that goes back to what Tim was saying about having a dystopia gives you an easy conflict, whereas a utopia, you definitely you can't really imagine, because the big one is the Star Trek universe,
Yeah.
which is everyone's sort of on the same level and very egalitarian, and that's a utopia. And the stories that they have to tell are around fringe worlds where the Federation hasn't successfully integrated these different cultures or whatever, and so in some sense, it's like
Adult.
it's very similar to a dystopia because there are the haves and the have-nots. So like the fact that we can't think of concepts for or we can't think of films that have used the utopian as opposed to the dystopian doesn't surprise me, because again, like there's no conflict in a perfect utopia.
Yeah,
like
there wouldn't be much of a scenario to really.
The idea
basically
is that
come
like
on.
a utopia is something you go to achieve rather than something that you're like, or there's already an existing conflict anyway.
Yeah.
I've actually got I was thinking of a good example of this. Rapture from Bioshock.
Okay. Yeah.
Starting out as a utopia for all those idealists, just free of any kind of, based around objectivism and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just completely going to shit, and in turn becoming a dystopia for like corruption and.
Yeah. The only ones I can think of are like utopias turned into dystopias.
Yeah.
So like if anyone's seen
Exactly.
Metropolis from like the 20s or whatever, it's a world that's labelled as a utopia because by like, a dystopian kind of like authoritarian government.
That is often the utopias that I think of, actually. When
Yeah.
I think of
They're
in
light.
fiction, it's always always a dystopia disguised as a utopia
yeah.
by the very conspirators behind the whole thing.
What's a good example of that?
Maybe Blade Runner, I'd say.
Yeah, Blade Runner
Yeah.
seems like a massive disparity, and the people who are
Yeah.
at the bottom are fully aware they're at the bottom.
Just that like universe.
Yeah, the universe, the kind
the
of
whole
world
universe.
building.
Well, what about the current Alien films?
Oh, I haven't seen them.
Like Prometheus.
Oh, I've seen Prometheus.
Prometheus.
We've never really
Prometheus
seen any kind
something.
of civilizations though, like in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
There
society.
was that
being
one in
of these.
Prometheus at the end that they show in Covenant
What?
when it turns out
Is that the
Wait.
mining ship?
Yeah, when it drops
yeah,
all the
when
shit
he
on.
drops all this
Yeah.
If anyone's
Well,
seen spoilers for Alien Covenant, by the
Yeah.
way.
Isn't that like James Franco?
Whoops. No,
No.
that was Michael Fassbender.
No, it was
Michael
James-
Fassbender's in both of them. He's a robot.
No, wait,
so-
yeah, it was. Yeah, James Franco. At the
He's an
very
actual
start.
robot. They can put him in anything.
Yeah, he's in at the very start.
Okay.
Like 5 seconds.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway,
Is he? Wow.
Yeah.
No.
he plays the
The
captain
captain,
who
yeah.
dies like
Oh.
before the movie. even
Spoilers.
It's the
Good
start of
one.
the movie. It's like the very beginning. We spoiled way worse.
We
Have we?
That's true.
Yeah, we spoiled like 5 seconds ago. Anyway,
Anyway,
dystopian.
so what made you want to bring this topic up? Like, what,
I just noticed that in the last
you haven't
week
noticed yet.
that I've been seeing less and less kind of.
Okay.
Actually, what about Animal Farm? Because I was thinking of George Orwell,
Yeah.
the king of dystopia. And I was thinking it's a bit too on the nose with 1984, but Animal Farm. You literally see them overthrowing all the humans. They plan it out to be a utopia.
Wait, is there an actual movie for that?
I think there was a movie.
Yeah, it's a
an
book,
animated
but it's
Yeah, I've read the book.
They've had
movie.
a
Book,
Jackson.
yeah. And then basically through all that hypocrisy, all the usual stuff, it just ends up forming a dystopia instead.
Yeah.
A benevolent dictator,
Well, it's just allegorical for the Russians.
communism, and yeah.
But yeah, that it does add to that discussion of most utopias breaking down into a dystopia in fiction, at least.
I
Yeah.
think we very rarely see a utopia stay a utopia.
Yeah.
Or it'd be an actual utopia.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's just, a thriving society. That's
Either
it.
that or we all just collectively watch a lot of dark shit and we have no hope in our
Yeah.
lives at all.
It's probably the latter.
But let's not dwell on that.
Would Utopia go along the lines of some like shows like skits of what were they called, like Friends or something? Would that be a utopia or anything?
There's got to be
No,
more like
Utopia?
that's
the
the future.
there's more like there's science fiction or there's apocalyptic kind of elements to it.
Okay.
So it's more about a world that's less similar to ours. So it's not like you can just show like modern day New York and say, hey guys, utopia.
Yeah, that's true.
Like there has to be like changes to it.
Well, for someone who was watching that in the 1980s, maybe.
Friends.
No, like modern day, like New York or some shit.
Oh,
My
maybe.
and Friends.
Or if you watch modern day versions of those massive what are they called? Like really advanced modern cities and everything where all the buildings are just glass.
Like altered carbon.
Yeah, shit
Some-
like that.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's like cities in like I don't know Dubai or wherever that
Yeah.
look like that.
It's definitely a less popular genre now than it was a few years ago. It felt like there were a lot,
Yeah.
especially in the young adult sort of realm with the Hunger
Yeah,
Games
that definitely
sort of
does.
paving the way. but like it's just like I think with any genre, like you can look at the Western and see how that went into decline, and now we have Westworld and other things that are sort of picking up that ball and running with it. It's something that will come back, I'm sure, and will fade away again.
Did we see it fade before the superhero stuff, or like was it?
This is an interesting
Yeah.
angle as well. Like I was
overlapping.
yeah.
It kind of took it over completely.
Yeah.
Do you guys think
It's killed a lot of genres.
Do you guys think it was the actual leading genre before the superhero genre showed up? Like the dystopian, like you could point to dystopian fiction and say
Of that time?
that's what everyone's watching. Because I still think there was no real like entry point. That it's just kind
That's
of,
true,
it's
yeah.
been there in the background. Dystopian films, like they're not so similar to each other. They leave a lot of room for interpretation.
Right,
A lot
that's
of
true.
differing parts.
It's
And
m-
you can just point at them as individual films rather than like chapters in a collective.
It's like an element of world building that can be inserted into other.
Yeah, exactly.
Things,
You can
yeah.
make a dystopian version in a superhero movie, like
Mm.
Thor Ragnarok, the world, the planet they live on, and everything. That one would be like
Sure, yeah,
Pretty
definitely.
No.
it's a junkyard.
Interesting.
We might get like superhero versions of that soon with
Yeah.
more depressing characters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
they're getting more
maybe.
outlandish, and they're going to space, so anything's possible.
I still want to see more humans, but okay. Not that I see enough of them anyway.
Marvel's getting pretty ridiculous. But yeah, so okay, I think we'll just move on to my topic now. I'm bringing up in the wake of this Rick and Morty being announced for 70 more episodes, because surely like the fan uproar and the furor and like just the general rabid following they have has influenced that decision to announce it. Because every other show you don't see them say, "Hey guys, we're secure for like at least 8 more seasons."
Yeah.
Like
You don't really
the
know.
impact of social media and the accessibility of this fan base, who can be incredibly overwhelming in their vocal views. Like, how do you guys think that's affected? How do you guys think that's affected television production or media production? And do you guys think it's been affected in a negative or a positive way?
I'd say it's pretty much like the advent of the internet. It's made it, collectively so much easier for those rabid fans to send death threats to the
yeah,
like
that's-
before it'd be like, oh, we got the death threat mailbox, just chuck it in the corner at
Yeah.
the studios. Now it's social media. They can just easily. They don't have time to cool down either. And just write the letter and go,
Yeah,
oh, this is
yeah.
ridiculous. I'm being an idiot.
It's so
They
easy.
just just click of a button, press the message.
And change.org like really helps that
Yeah.
cause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Petitioning. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane.
But I think like there's a good sides and bad sides to it. Like I think the feel good story sort of the year in TV land is Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and how the Twitter sphere just blew up when their cancellation was announced, and a lot of really high profile sort of influencers went to back it up, and like Mark Hamill's in there and stuff like that, Sean Astin, and really let the studios and the networks know that this is something that people really wanted to continue. Like we can say like deals were happening in the background that we didn't know about, but at the same time, I can't imagine that it would have been picked up by NBC within 24 hours if Twitter hadn't been like hugely all over it.
As adamant as they were about it.
Yeah.
'Cause, like the idea is that when a network drops a show, because it happens all the time, it's because the show's failing and because the network doesn't think that it's living up to its standards. So they cut it out, but there's no reason why any other show can just come in at any time and say, "Oh yeah, we'll pick this show up as well." Like cult shows, like for example, I don't know if anyone's seen Deadwood Beyond Tim, but that was a show in like 2004. It was a HBO show, and it wasn't getting like massive views. It wasn't blowing up the world like Game of Thrones, but it was a really good show, and it had a really devoted following, and it got axed. And I feel like if that happened now and everything, and if there was like an uproar in that, like all these people could see that like it's got a following, there's an audience there, and then it just causes a bidding war, which is exactly what happened with
Right.
None.
It's kind of like, once again, with the internet and everything, it's kind of like that line between the rabid, devoted cult fan base who are like really vocal about a show, and just mainstream shows that are already just successful, getting views and good ratings and everything. It's like kind of like blurs the line between that level of devotion
Yeah.
because it's just so much easier nowadays for like even casual fans just to speak up and go, hey, I liked that show.
Yeah.
You know what's weird? Because so it's moving to NBC, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
On the same day, they cancelled Lucifer.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Cancelled a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
I'm
They
still
cancelled
very-
like 4 different shows.
Yeah, a
like
whole bunch
4
of shit.
cancelled.
No,
Vox went through a huge
Yeah.
cancellation ring. I'm still very skeptical
They
about
year
NBC.
round cancellation.
Well, yeah, it's interesting as well because NBC like obviously doesn't have the budget of Fox.
Yeah.
So is it going to be the same quality of show? Like, what changes will they need to make?
Yeah,
to
and
make it
production
work?
and all that.
I'm more worried
Yeah.
about studio meddling on my end.
Well, yeah.
That's just me.
What is Fox doing? They've sold like all of their Marvel like properties as well.
Yeah.
That could be actually.
But also the
Disney?
the Fox Marvel collaboration hasn't been very productive for them, really. Like,
Yeah, I think they still own Spider-Man. But
No,
it's
that's
like
Sony.
they've got like
That's
a
that
Sony.
deal.
was Sony.
That's Sony.
Fox was fantastic.
X-Men.
Oh no, yeah,
No.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they've got like a weird
Deadpool.
deal.
What do you
Yeah.
reckon the bad side of it is?
I think the bad side of it is that it puts pressure on the creators who really should just be left alone, like to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Because the idea of a show is the appeal of it has been that they're distanced from the audience. Like if the audience likes it, then that's great. But
Yeah.
they should be able to go off, shut themselves in a room, and not have to worry about
Yeah.
what expectations are.
Yeah.
That's
in
true.
order to not meddle with their own ideas and their own intentions. And I feel like such an unadulterated connection between the audience and the creator puts like an unfair pressure on
Yeah.
them and like unfair expectations, and then just
Yeah.
makes it harder and harder for them to do their jobs and harder for us to be satisfied.
What is it? 70 episodes that they've been told to bring out.
They've
For Rick and
announced that
Morty,
like
yeah.
they've been like Justin Roiland put out a Twitter, I think, saying that like
Yeah.
they've been Adult
Locked
Swim
in.
have like
Yeah.
ordered 70 more episodes of Rick and Morty, so
Okay.
they're not like just doing them in like one massive chunk of like
Yeah.
70 episode season 4.
Yeah, obviously.
Like,
yeah,
they're gonna-
the next season not going to be
Yeah,
70
but
episodes.
the idea is they're locked down for like 6 or 7 more seasons.
I think 70 is a good number at this point.
Yeah, if they left, I feel like that's an entire show's run.
Yeah.
How many
Like-
how many episodes are out now?
Right now, there's like
Three
about
seasons?
30.
there's 10 in
30.
season 3. I think there's 10 in
11.
Season,
I think 11 maybe.
there's 11 in
Yeah,
season
season
1,
two.
so it's
Yeah.
like
Okay.
there's at least 30.
Yeah.
30,
So,
32, I think.
because the thing, like the magic number for TV has always been 100.
Well, we said Rick
Like-
and Morty 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, yeah, hey.
But like there are historical reasons why 100 episodes is a good number to aim for because of syndication on like broadcast, so that like they can sell the show as a package to a network, which will be able to run it every weeknight
Yeah.
for like however long.
20
Till
years.
TV,
Yeah.
till TV
So that's-
fizzle out.
Yeah, so that's like this is probably a lot of the reasoning behind like let's get 70 more episodes of this, is so we get to 100
Yeah.
and we can like keep
It's
rerunning it every
You're-
season.
You're also worried about the quality of the
Yeah,
episodes
exactly.
because they're going to be run out by these fans that
Yeah.
don't understand how difficult it actually is
Yeah.
to
well, that's the thing.
write and produce an
Like-
episode of Rick and Morty.
It's an American tradition to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the ones who put out 8 seasons, 11 season TV series, and it leaves a lot of room for
Like The Office,
slack.
you don't want it to do
Like
The
The Office, like
yeah.
the British, like the difference between
Supernatural.
like the British
Yeah,
is they'll have like 2 series and everything, and yeah, people will be pissed because it's like we had 12 episodes and we love this show,
We
we
want
can have
more,
more.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like, is that better than like having what's
Yeah.
there is good and it's as good as it's going to be than
Solid
having
gold,
like
yeah.
more
Than
and
just
not as
running it
good?
into the ground.
Because like The Office goes till season 5, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and then the rest of it is just,
Yeah.
and like Steve Carell isn't even in it anymore. Like they just wanted to milk it as much as they possibly could,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's what we don't want for Rick
I
and
mean, I
Morty.
think like the other negative element, like, and we can talk about the toxicity of the Rick and Morty fan base in particular,
Yeah.
yelling about
Sorry.
Szechuan sauces.
Oh my
That
God.
video.
Yeah, it was bad.
But like
Blaming the
it
female
does,
writers.
I feel like it sets a dangerous precedent for that type of a fan base to grow around a show, and like just expect that when they yell, they'll be heard.
Yeah.
If they yell loud enough, they'll get more of what they want, sort of thing. And it makes. I mean, Twitter's just a freaking cesspool anyway. So
Do you know what? Do you want to like that sounds like? The internet is a teenager that just wants shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
needy.
Well, sections of the
Fucking needy.
internet. Like, I think Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland have their heads screwed on well enough to know that this doesn't represent our entire
Well,
fan
they're
base.
adults though. Like they know.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And then they got kids that love that show.
But they'd still get to you.
So yeah, that's true. It would after a while, after your fans yelling and screaming at you,
Yeah.
bring on more episodes.
That arsehole at McDonald's who starts to squealing like a pig because there's no Szechuan sauce.
Yeah.
It becomes
exactly.
like an ownership thing when, you know, accessibility is right here. Everyone's opinion can be heard. Everyone's opinion wants to be the loudest and everything because they're so passionate about it. And then it just becomes a massive cesspit.
of
I mean-
confusion.
I like the other element that you might think about is like, are there shows like Lucifer, for example, that maybe don't have that vocal fan base, or they show their appreciation in different ways other than social media? Are they getting left behind? Are there shows that should have more seasons that don't get them because the fans just aren't there to do that sort of work? You know.
A good example of how you're talking about Deadwood before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't come back because they
By
didn't.
the way, watch it, guys.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
I've
It's
got it
very
at home.
It's sick.
But like how in 2004 they didn't have like that sort of the internet fan base to bring it back, and everyone would be like, give it back. Similar to Arrested Development that went down in 2005 or 6 or
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
And now it's come back because everyone's like, oh, we really want it
Yeah.
back because of the internet.
It's like vocal confirmation.
I feel like it depends on the show because
yes. Well, yeah. Go on.
like I don't know if anyone watched the Young Justice
Yeah.
show that
Yeah.
was cancelled in like
Season 2. Yeah.
after season 2. That's 2015, I think.
Yep.
And that was crazy. That was not as bad as the Rick and Morty stuff, but it was there.
Yeah.
If you're a big fan.
I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
And now they're back for season 3. They've announced it. It's coming out at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's taking them like 3 years to convince people
To
that
revive that.
to revive it on a
Yeah.
on a different platform as well.
Wow.
So they've like the CW and DC, not the CW. DC has created a platform just for their own shit now.
Right.
So for Deadwood, it might be the community wasn't big enough to support that.
Yeah.
So
But it's like Deadwood as well.
Then again, Firefly actually. So.
yeah,
Yeah.
Firefly's a huge cult following.
Exactly. Sometimes it's the actual channel, and like Deadwood was HBO. Like
Yeah.
these guys are like the top.
Well, this
tier.
is what I was going to say, is that between Deadwood
Deadpool.
and
We're seeing Deadpool later.
between Deadwood and Sopranos, they were the first
Yeah.
sort of long form narrative TV shows that HBO ever produced, and really sort of set the stage for the entire genre for like Game of Thrones and like
Sopranos especially.
you know.
That show was insane.
Yeah, and so the fact that and you can look at the production values and say, well, Deadwood and it is every time.
Yeah.
It's an expensive show to produce because it's a period piece, and Sopranos was a bit cheaper because it was
Yeah,
just modern day.
definitely.
So maybe the economics of it didn't work out at the time, and so like it was just ahead of its time enough that like it couldn't. But at the same time, it was a like a stage setter for things like Game of Thrones,
Well, like,
which.
the genre, man. Like, it's a Western.
Yeah,
Like, the
well,
mid-
yeah,
2000s.
absolutely.
Nobody gave a shit at that point.
But it's such a good show.
Yeah.
It's
I
unfortunate.
can't see Ian McShane in anything else.
Yeah.
This is Al Swearingen, and if he's not swearing his ass off,
Yeah.
I'm not happy. Man.
I think at the end of the day, I think the producer and the writers also have a say in it. So like, imagine if Justin Roiland and Harmon went, you know what? We have 3 seasons of Rick and
Three
Morty.
seasons,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We have 3 seasons of Rick and Morty right now.
And we're satisfied. We want to move on
Yeah.
to other projects.
Yeah.
We have 30 episodes out. We're done. Guys, be dicks about it. We
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah.
They could have just done that as well.
So I mean, like,
It's spite them.
honestly, the cult of the creator around those guys, like whatever they move on to, will probably have a huge following as well. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's more Rick and Morty.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah, people didn't give a shit when Community got cancelled, but now everybody knows who Dan Harmon is.
yeah,
Yeah.
But like on the other end of this spectrum as well, with regards to like internet and its influence on like media, we're seeing kind of like the same thing in a bit more of an extreme case with like these TV shows. That we're talking about fan bases being able to influence the longevity of a TV series.
Mhm.
What about revivals? Because we know that like people like Friends and people like X-Files and people like all these old shows that have been out, and now the support for that's becoming so vocal that some channels think that it'll be a good idea if we just bring this back.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
so they
unless-
have been doing.
And it's kind of pointless sometimes. Like Twin Peaks was
Yeah.
a different matter because David Lynch brought it back to comment
Yeah.
specifically on that.
And he had more things to say, I guess.
yeah,
Because I think like the danger is that like something gets revived that the creators had moved on from probably, and they don't really have more stories that they ever really wanted to tell. Like they'd finished their run. There was an ending to their last season that was satisfactory, and like, you know, I can't think of any specific examples, but I don't think anybody was really craving more Arrested Development, especially after season 4.
Not after season
Not after
4.
season
That was
4.
season 4.
No.
Everyone's like, oh.
That was done.
It was
Season 3
concluded. Yeah, season 3 was the ending.
Season 3 had an ending. Yeah.
He finally,
He moved away.
and the
That's
ship.
it.
Yeah.
finally
He
leaves his
says,
family. Yeah,
like,
that was
bye,
it.
bye.
Full circle.
Yeah, and then he comes back and he's like,
Yeah.
he didn't really need to come
And
back.
the announcement of a season 5 didn't inspire much
Oh. And the
excitement,
trailer's
really,
just
honestly.
takes-
Yeah.
I was gonna say, have you seen the trailer?
Yeah.
No, I haven't even looked at it.
Tim and I aren't
There's
convinced.
one funny moment in it, and that's it. It's
Yeah.
towards the end, and it's when
Right.
they're
I
making
just-
a joke.
It's
about
just a
the
running
end.
joke on, you know.
Yeah.
Keen to just see Will Arnett play Joe. That's probably the only reason
Yeah.
I'll watch
Yeah,
it. To be
he's
honest.
still
That's-
good, yeah.
Yeah, but
Anything that guy does is still good.
yeah, no,
BoJack Horseman.
yeah, maybe.
BoJack is so good. Alright, do you think BoJack Horseman would have happened if Arrested Development hadn't been cancelled? Because in some ways there are parallels between
That's
the
a good
stories.
question. I don't want to think about it though.
If we go back to the Brooklyn Nine-Nine thing, what was really interesting was that, like, because these shows are being produced and then they're aired, like, what, a few months later, right? So could you imagine being, like, the actor going, fuck, I've been fired. Okay, I can go do something else now.
Yeah.
Next,
Well, yeah, I
like,
mean-
next day, I'm like, oh, I got a job again.
But
Yeah.
this is one of the reasons why season 4 of Arrested Development was such a mess, because they couldn't get everybody in the same room at the
that's
same
exactly
time. They
right,
were
yeah.
all moving on to different projects, and so they wrote around this restriction that they had for people's time and like the amount of time they had with each of the actors.
Yeah.
And it was a mistake, if you ask me. Like, it just resulted in a bit of a mess of a season.
They were
Yeah,
never
it
in
just didn't
in the
work.
same scenes, were they? They were like
No.
always choppy,
There
and
was
that's why they
one
had to do
scene-
it in the
Yeah.
the prequel sequel sort of like back
Yeah.
and forward
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah,
And
I feel like it's just maybe like a complete intensification of like nostalgia, because like you're seeing it
Similar
come
to the
back.
Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
It's
you're
really
seeing it
all
come
that
back
they
in
are,
a
though,
massive
really.
way now. Like this past decade, like it's just been it's just been a massive thing, and now everyone just can't get over the fact like we're looking at the past with rose-tinted glasses. That like we remember everything being much better than it was, and that's forcing it all to come back in and just not letting go. Like the idea is those guys would have done, like Will Arnett would have done Arrested Development, Jason Bateman and all that, and once that cancelled, they moved on to bigger and better things. Their careers got like, you know, more like intense, and just to come back and everything, it would have felt like just trying to force magic into a bottle. So
Yeah. And now, but they're all together again. Why are they all together again now? What, do they not have any projects or anything they're doing?
Or maybe
Yeah,
Netflix
well,
has a
that's the
bigger
issue.
budget to pay them to be part of this project now.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's probably big. Everyone's really wanting it back,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
well, they've been waiting a long time, so maybe the idea was they are waiting for their schedules to clear up,
yeah,
so they can get back together.
that's true. That's also true. As well,
'Cause
maybe
they-
since season 4.
Yeah, because they said years ago, like season 5's coming soon, and that was like what,
Yeah, they did. didn't
3
they?
years ago.
So, changing gears just slightly into the realm of film, and I want to talk about how. So recently, we've had a few films that really dive into gamer culture, but I'm interested in how film, like the video game industry and the medium has evolved to a point where it's now influencing other visual media. So like we have some films, like my favorite example of this is Edge of Tomorrow, Tom Cruise. Did anyone see it?
Yeah.
No.
So
Not a bad movie.
basically,
It's called
it's
Live, Die, Repeat.
yes, that's the name of the manga that it was based on.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
it's
a tagline.
based on a manga.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the name in like Europe or something.
But so like for those who haven't seen that, it's essentially a Respawn movie. Like it's about a guy who for reasons that are gone into in the movie, like he's fighting a battle, and then when he dies in the battle, he wakes up at the same point that like something happened. So he's able to live through a period of a few days over and over again. It's very Groundhog Day, but because it's an action film, like it very much like gives you a sense that this is a very video gamey sort of thing, where he's got a save point or a restore point, and he goes back to it, and he has to repeat the actions to move forward in his progress. And so I just wanted to talk about that. And like also in less obvious examples of things, because there was another thing that happened. One of the critiques I heard around about The Last Jedi was that Finn's storyline felt like a side quest. That like he went off to the casino planet and then didn't really accomplish much and then came back.
Yeah.
And like it so narratively that film felt like a video game for some people because there was all this action that was a little bit meaningless, and that's something that's quite commonplace in certain types of video games.
It was a weird movie though.
It was,
You had a lot going in that movie.
yeah.
Not just that.
What did that end?
I thought it was pretty good, but
I enjoyed
this
it,
conversation.
But
Yeah, not about it, yeah.
I enjoyed the film, but like I can't necessarily disagree with that criticism that I've heard. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else? Like any other films that make you want to, like, even if it's just a film that makes you wish there was a game of this film.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, that's a hard one.
There's like different aspects to it though, because you said like they used like story elements in the narrative for Star Wars. I was watching Avengers and like I thought visually I was watching a video game.
Yeah.
I thought that was Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Happening that like it feels like it's overwhelming, but
Well,
then
Also, Ragnarok pretty much the same.
yeah, Ragnarok was basically the same.
There's a shot in Ragnarok which is them fighting on the bridge, which looks like a side-scrolling like
Just to point you that we are
Fighting.
not going to talk about Infinity Wars yet.
no.
No worries. No worries.
We teased it last time, didn't we?
I actually when I was watching Wonder Woman, that final battle.
That was a huge battle.
That huge CGI filled battle, so over the top, actually reminded me very much of like classic God of War and all that kind of stuff. Like,
Well, he was
Boss
a God of
fights.
War.
yeah,
I haven't seen it, but yeah.
weird, huh? Yeah. No, it just.
Oh yeah,
'cause
no,
it's
I
just-
know what you mean.
It was
now,
so
yeah.
ridiculous and over the top, and like they just keep like
And
getting.
it keeps escalating.
There's no
yeah.
actual like sense of vulnerability on either of their parts in the way like how they react to things. It's like when you stab someone or like shoot someone in a boss fight, they just kind of go and then just go right back to it. It was pretty much to me. I recall it was just constantly like that.
Just man.
Like someone get hit by like some debris and they just get right back up and keep going. Like, it was very boss
boss battle.
Anime-like.
very
I guess almost Hacksaw Ridge would
But
even be
that's
similar
kind of
to
explained
that.
in the
I haven't
story
seen
though, like
Great movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
them being gods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be kind of explained.
He's got a point there.
It
So
can be, but it still felt like it. You'd think they'd both be able to weaken each other in some way.
my other favorite example of this that I've thought of is John Wick.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because like he literally goes from
Dead
boss
Eye.
to boss to boss,
Yeah.
and he shoots people in the head all the way down, and it's like,
Yeah.
how much is this like a video game?
He
Like,
shoots one guy in the head twice as well.
He shoots all the guys in their head twice. Like
No,
he
but,
double taps.
someone
amazing.
gets up again after getting shot.
Which scene was
big
that? Oh yeah, the
big
sumo
sumo guy.
dude. Yeah. Yeah. How does he? Yeah, I wondered that too. Right over like, didn't he just get shot through
Was
the
that the
brain?
first one?
Second. That's when all the hits are getting called on him.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All the
Like every
pencil
other
scene and
different
stuff
movie.
like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Like it all feels
That's
like
funny
it's
because he like
an
he
action
talks
game.
a bit like that's what the
They're
mob
talking
boss
about-
was talking about.
Yeah,
him.
it's from movie 1 and 2. They're talking
Yeah,
about
and he
him.
does it.
Kills 3 dudes with a pencil,
Oh yeah.
and he kills those 2 dudes.
I
with
saw
a
the second
pencil.
pretty recently, man.
Yeah,
Such a great.
no, me
I have
too.
yet
they're
to
very
see
good. They're very good.
But like, they sort of remind me of those old arcade games we used to play, where you like aimed at
Yeah.
the thing and shot
Yeah.
as you moved into different rooms.
Yeah,
That was pretty
It's
much.
like
Yeah.
Max
A
Payne
rail
3,
shooter.
but like
Yeah.
everything's just so precise.
there's a great moment in John Wick 2 where he's preparing like his grounds of combat or whatever, his battlegrounds.
Yeah,
And he's like hiding guns in different locations
Yeah,
and making
yeah,
sure
yeah.
he knows all the
It's like the
enemies.
10-minute bit
like-
for the boss, like
like
prepare
Spectre.
yourself.
Like in Spectre when they're preparing everything, it's almost like
Oh yeah.
Nazi zombies or something. Like
Yeah, ball the windows.
exactly, they're building the windows, they're setting all these traps, they're setting up like
Skyfall.
whatever they.
Yeah, Skyfall.
Skyfall.
Was Skyfall?
Yeah.
Not
Okay,
Spectre.
that's right. Yeah, Skyfall. Yeah, and they're just setting it all up and
It's way better than Spectre.
What about the
And then she dies.
Spoiler.
Oh yes,
Jesus.
What about the Doom movie that came out a while
Yeah.
ago?
So this is that's
Like, is that something that it's not a bad movie, but like at the end when they do it straight off, like
first person.
from the
Yeah.
first, like they did it well, but
Yeah.
it just it was too much of the
I
game
think
to
that's-
watch in
yeah.
a movie. Like, I don't know.
No, I
Can we
think
talk about that? Because like while you're talking about like video game concepts,
With BFG at the end with Dwayne.
I haven't seen it, but what about actual video game adaptations where they take interesting ideas from video games and try to make a movie into it?
Doesn't work usually.
It doesn't
Not
work.
Pixel.
actually really bad.
You've got Resident
Pixel.
Evil.
Which is why it's interesting that like the cinema is taking all these cues from video games, but like they can't make a video game movie work. It's
meant to be a game.
Like,
yeah.
That's just
Dude,
how
like
it
on
is.
Uncharted, that's been in like development for a decade. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Like,
Can't
the
happen.
issue with movies is they're kind of like, you know, they always think that they're always going to be surpassed. They're always worried that their
No.
position's going to be taken over. When
Yeah.
really they should, like, they're trying to come up with gimmicks all the time to keep people's interest invested, and it's been happening all throughout like film history. So like, the reason people keep coming back is because of the films themselves and the way it's actually done, and like the fact that people aren't going to really lose their passion for film, and they should just like embrace that and stop worrying.
Like apparently the last Tomb Raider movie, I haven't seen it yet, but
Yeah.
it's garbage.
Yeah, I've heard.
That's
I
exactly
hear that
what I was
about
about to
movies
bring up.
online.
Yeah.
The Last of Us movie. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I've got the game.
Yeah, like it's,
Yeah.
it's an 11-hour movie. You can enjoy
Yeah.
it playing,
But
but
that
you don't need to sit and watch it.
The story, I feel like part of the storytelling is being able to discover the story for the first time. If you make like a game about a movie, you're not really discovering the story for the first time because you already know it from the
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's so
Yeah.
long
movie.
on that.
Like you don't have that kind of like
Yeah, but if
first
you-
kind of connection.
Reversing that whole thing, you know, a movie's like 2 hours, 3 hours. Like it's like a book or like a game. Like the length has got to be so much longer to actually
Yeah.
provide that kind of. That's why, like, say for example, like the Warriors, like when Rockstar adapted that into a game, instead of making the whole movie just like that 2 hour, potentially I don't even know how long it's probably set over like a couple hours.
Yeah.
Potentially making it like all just straight an adaptation. It's set like months before the events, showing how they actually get inducted into the meeting that all the gangs go to at the very start.
Oh yeah.
So it's so much build up, and then like the first 2/3 are them just building up their reputation, getting into all these like adventures, like, you know,
well, because
fighting all these other gangs. Yeah, and the third.
It's
the-
because
they were never
Rockstar,
all
like,
exactly the same, man.
No.
yeah, Rockstar took, like, you know, they based the story around the medium they were working in. They weren't trying to make the Warriors movie and then just transplant that into a game.
Yeah.
Like, they
Yeah,
were taking the
that's
Warriors
true.
idea and then making a game, like building from that. The problem with the movies is, like, taking the games is it's like they struggle between deciding how much they want to make of their
Yeah.
own and how much they want to leave in to attract the audience that's already there. And that's what pisses people off.
Yeah, they end up serving nobody.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
ends
whole
up, like,
movie to book, like.
Yeah,
sort of
it's
thing,
the
like, to
adaptation.
movie.
yeah. So,
I mean, I can imagine games like I can imagine the filmmakers figuring this out at some point and being able to
at some point.
accomplish
Yeah.
something a bit better than what we've had in the past. But like
Apparently, Wreck-It Ralph was good.
Wreck-It
Yeah,
Ralph's
yeah,
Yeah,
but-
but Wreck-It Ralph was its own
That's arcade
property.
mode.
That was
Yeah.
it. Yeah, but yeah, that's it.
That was
Yeah,
a
basic
property from, like, a
concept.
character in the
It was,
80s.
it was
Yeah.
just a concept of arcade games and they made it into a movie.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the one example that wasn't half bad was the Ratchet and Clank movie.
wow.
I hear it was
Yeah,
better
no,
than
I
the
hear
game
that
that
was
came
pretty
out.
good
I
too.
hear that was
Yeah.
pretty much
Watched it.
cutscenes though.
But that if you play
Yeah.
the new Ratchet and Clank, like the
I
remastered
did
from the old
play
one,
it,
the
yeah.
cutscenes are beautiful, like Disney or something. So with animation stuff like that, it can be done. And if you just watch all the cutscenes anyway, it's like you're watching a movie.
Exactly.
You know what I think the issue is? Like, with games and everything, you get the story, you get the cutscenes, you get all, like, the narrative running through. But there's also the time in the middle, like, you know, The Last of Us and God of War, you're running around in between that, like, taking in little details of the environment, taking in little details of the character, like, getting so many hours to invest in these characters and the world and what's
That's
happening.
true.
That a movie's never going to be able to replicate and definitely not surpass the attachment you already have to these characters, because you'll just be sitting there from the instant you sit down and comparing the two and just judging the other one based on, like, already the connection you've developed.
So
It's all about the time you spend with the character themselves.
yeah,
there's also like there have been a few movies that have taken, like I mentioned Edge of Tomorrow already, that have taken sort of tropes from video games and successfully spun off an original property. The other one I was thinking of was Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which is very like it obviously, like, visually it literally takes video game icons and iconography and uses it. But like again, it's got that storyline which is literally like he has to defeat the 7 evil X's, and
Yeah.
and they all encounter him one by one. So like that's an example. Like if there wasn't obviously there wasn't a Scott Pilgrim video game, but you can imagine what it would have been.
It was pretty good actually.
Yeah, the game was made after the movie though.
No,
So
because the movie's based on the comic.
yes.
And then like game came after based on the movie.
Because we
Yes.
really need a game. We really need a game after a
Jesus.
movie at this
Look
point.
at the world we're living in.
But that was decent because they, rather than trying to necessarily adapt the film, it took the cues that the film was taking and the comic book were taking as inspiration, which is that sort of River City Ransom sort of like side-scrolling beat 'em up idea, and just made that game.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
almost-
more- oh, sorry. Go on.
Would almost Kick-Ass even go into that as well? Like with the...
Kick-Ass, yeah.
that-
I've only seen number 1. I
Yeah, I
haven't
haven't
seen
seen
number
number 1.
Don't
too.
watch number 2. You don't need to see it.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've seen that film. I don't know.
That still has like it's got like a superhero story. I don't know if it would even be like a spin-off, like a Marvel movie almost, but not. That felt like, watching that felt like a video game as well.
Okay.
Like with all the fighting scenes and that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's like you're clearing the corridor, clearing.
Yeah.
I have a
And
question.
like yeah.
What do you guys think do you guys think that like the elements of video games that we're picking them up in movies, like they came like from video games, or do you think that
Well,
like,
this is-
the very nature
That's
of
the
the
question.
game?
That's why I'm interested in this topic.
Like, puts this shit in already.
Is
Like the
that like
chicken and the egg question?
I think exactly. Well, I think maybe I don't know how much I'm seeing of this because I spend a lot of time both playing video games and watching films. But even like I personally, I don't know about you guys, but I spend a lot of time watching YouTubers play video games or like Twitch streamers play video games.
Yeah.
And like consuming the content that way rather than actually playing it myself because I've got better things to do. So like there's an element for me of like I'm noticing things in films that I just have seen in video games but like it'd be interesting to talk to someone who doesn't consume as many video games, see how they react to the same sorts of
I also find it really interesting. Are you guys familiar with the old? It was mainly in adventure games back in the 90s when they had that technique.
Adapt those.
Well, you
Yeah.
might have heard about it.
Like
but
Monkey Island?
Nah, this is like a different form of animation. They pretty much line it up. I don't know how they do it, but they pretty much use actual actors.
Yeah.
And,
It's rotoscoping.
rotoscoping.
Yeah.
That kind of concept.
So they project an image of an actual actor onto a page and then trace over them. And this is an old technique in animation.
Yeah.
It's not specifically.
Yeah, that's what they
like-
did like with them, like Max Fleischer's Superman once.
Yeah,
That's
I was
why
gonna
his
bring that up.
animation looks like so fluid.
Yeah, there's actually I think Captain Crispian had a recent video on
Yes,
this. Like, check it out on YouTube. It's really good.
Dude, that guy's a pain in the ass, man. I'm waiting 8 months for the next video.
But no, he for the 80th anniversary of Superman, he put up a video about the Max Fleischer cartoons and showed the process of rotoscoping in that. So worth looking up.
Yeah, it's good.
But like it was like what are they called? Dragon's Lair, I think. The video games.
Phantasmagoria, all that
Well, oh yeah,
stuff. A lot of horror.
So basically they were quick time event
Yeah.
like games that you didn't control the character directly, but you'd be
Point and
presented with options
Yeah.
on a screen, and then like the animation would just go through depending on what direction you pushed on the joystick or whatever. So that's, and like the modern day equivalent of that is like David Cage, like Beyond Two Souls, Heavy Rain. He's got Detroit Become Human coming out soon.
Okay.
Very much,
scary.
Is
Is that mocap or that's
something.
not mocap?
that would be
That is
mocap,
mocap.
yeah.
Oh,
But
everyone's doing that now.
But
It's
like
like a Heavy
the
Rain
animation
too.
technique,
Yeah.
yes, but also the video game mechanic of you don't have full control over a character, but you choose what they decide to
Yeah.
do, sort of thing.
Yes, okay, sorry. No, I was just thinking of something.
If we go back to your
Okay.
thing with like finding video game elements in movies,
Yep.
you also got to remember like the directors that are making stuff now would have probably started playing video games when video games were like in its infancy back then.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. And like, so if they may be unconscious, this is the other element that I haven't necessarily talked about, is that they may not even realize that some of the techniques they're using come from video games, like, because it's just ingrained into their sort of psyche. They just sort of do it because it feels natural to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's definitely a point. Yeah.
On the flip side of that, like, what about the opposite? Like, we're seeing games now take on more like cinematic qualities instead of like video game ones. So like these single player narratives, like God of War is like single shot the entire time.
Yeah,
like,
it's
cutscenes, like these emotional like storytelling like scenes and all that. And, like, the idea is they're building it to kind of like, you know, adapt off of that stuff. It's less gamey and more like, you know, emotionally investing than it ever was before.
Yeah.
That's like when you're talking about the games, like the choice ones, Detroit and Heavy Rain. That is heavily based off like movies. And
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you play as 3 different people, and you follow their stories and their lives, and most of the time you create everything. Like that, you write your own story almost.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of like choose your own adventure storytelling.
Yeah.
Skyrim's kind of like that. The whole Elder Scrolls.
I never played Skyrim.
Isn't that more open world?
Yeah, that's an RPG.
Yeah,
So,
RPG
like,
has the same elements.
but it definitely is. It definitely could be a movie, but it wouldn't be interesting because there's.
Yeah,
you
so
can't
like
just have a single
what makes the Heavy Rain sort of style of thing different to Skyrim is that like it's always a third person, it's always a camera. The camera's position is always very specifically chosen, rather than like being in first person, but or third person if you desire, but like over the shoulder all the time.
And there's no loading screens. It's all just if there's a cutscene, that's the loading screen.
Yeah,
and it's like you're watching a video.
It's more linear, like open world, like RPGs like Skyrim like, allow for like unique kind of little happenings that will you know occur during the thing. But the overall story, there will be a few branching paths, but like it's not going to be like Heavy Rain where it's like 20 different endings. Depending on your choices, you'll get a different one, or like this character might not even.
But
be
it's
alive
still
at
always
that
the
point.
same storyline, like the same direction.
Skyrim, it's like you know,
go
A
here
to
for-
B. The ending's not going to change.
So,
I think we're going to cap it off there.
Yeah.
We're running out of time. We're going to go watch Deadpool now.
yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
No worries.
Yeah,
So we're
that'd be
going to
good.
make our session for that. But thanks for having Konny and Dylan back on. And
Thanks for having
hopefully
us.
remember to
Good chat.
find us on YouTube,
Yeah.
Anchor,
Facebook,
Facebook.
iTunes.
Yeah, all the places where you get your podcasts.
Podbean.
all there. Podbean.
Pocket
Pocket
Podcasts.
On Spotify?
Spotify is more difficult to get our
Yeah.
stuff on, so it's...
Eventually SoundCloud.
Eventually.
Yeah.
We'll get there eventually.
Alright.
No way.
Thanks for listening.
See you guys in 2 weeks.
Adios.